Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the first session of the day. Can you hear the mic okay? Cool. This morning's session is on future pharma supply chains, going beyond logistics. We have a really expert panel who will introduce themselves shortly. I'm really keen that we get audience participation, so if you have a question, wave or put it up on the app thing, and I'll promise I'll look, and those guys down there say they'll wave if something comes up. We would be really interested in stirring up the discussion if we can. This is a really important topic, definitely important topic with the people in the room, but sometimes forgotten by the companies that people work for. If you don't get the stuff out the door, money doesn't come in the top end, so it's really important. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Francis Crick as one of my tasks in life. I've been involved in both small companies, pharma, academia over a number of years, involved in getting in the compounds into the clinical trials, compounds into sales. I've also been involved in some quite complex new things like gene therapy 20 years ago. It's finally making it now. There's issues around there, and recently I was involved in a company making live biotherapeutics, GT biologics, and that in itself will have supply chain issues. If we think we have supply chain issues with small molecules and tablets, they will really increase that. But yet the pressure is on for novel medicines. So I'd really be interested in picking up all of these questions. So what I'm going to first do is go over to the panel. We'll just go down the panel, ask them to introduce themselves just for a couple of minutes and their business that they're involved in.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Thorsten Mau. I'm working my entire life for the company Boehringer Ingelheim. Have been there in different roles within operations, and currently I'm being responsible within operations for steering the entire operational globally network into its future. So we've been undergoing currently heavily a transformation of building up the network to make it fit for the next 10 years. And being further, as you all know, small molecules are not very sexy right now. So what we try to do is to keep keeping the pace here, trying to adjust our network for those future challenges, supporting other businesses which are coming up. And my group is doing that for the entire small molecule network, including chemical manufacturing as well as drug product. And also in that group, we're taking care of that the processes being needed within the network, talking here standardization, new technologies, new system platforms, are also then being incorporated into our thinking process. So in order at the end to shape a network which serves then the best the business needs, and that is for us one of the biggest transformational elements right now, which is the integration of operations into certain businesses. In former times, it has been a functional organization being aside. Now we have reorganized everything, integrated it into the business, and that's what also is driven by my group to make sure that this integration and this working together with the different functions is going well, and all is going along with those challenges we're currently perceiving in the markets with the technologies, the price pressure, and to make sure that the network is delivering on a supply as well as on a launch perspective to the needs of commercial.
Thank you very much. It'd be really interesting to pick up whether that's competitive strength, both in terms of the pricing, the options that you get, but also in your in-licensing capacity, I think.
Good morning. My name is Lucas Hüdiger. I'm running for Patheon, the drug substance division, which includes small molecules and bio, but also the pharma development services, which develops new formulations, sterile tablets, OSD soft gels. I have more than 20 years experience in the CMO industry, started in API, but I've run also supply chains for cell therapy, viral therapy. I'm at the moment really fascinated to be at the interface, especially on the development side between small molecules and formulations. So I have both parts in my hands, and it's interesting what you can actually do if you do work in parallel in that area. And supply chain, it's another very interesting topic for me. I also ran commodity chemical businesses in my past, so I think there's a lot to learn, and I think we can optimize a lot in these areas.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Andy Dwyer. I'm working for GSK. I've been in the industry 13 years, so I think a relative newbie in comparison to some of the panel and the audience. But in my time, always at GSK, I've worked in supply chain. And I've spanned across API, drug product, and packaging, labeling, distribution operations, and also looking at innovative development activities supporting changes within those various nodes of the supply chain. Currently, I'm working in the clinical supply chain, at the back end of the supply chain, so packaging, labeling, distribution. And our main focus at the moment is really to drive radical innovation in that part of the business to really improve responsiveness and reduce lead times to respond to different needs of the clinic and how the clinic write different styles of protocol these days, mainly focusing on adaptive design. We focus on achieving this really by collaboration is one of the things that I'm passionate about. Recently with this project, working with a collaboration with called Remedies, which is a UK government industry and academic partnership, which has been a great help in forging bridges across companies and academia and helping with seed funding to drive radical innovations to improve services to the clinic is our focus at the moment.
Morning, everyone. My name is Gregor Kavalitz. I've spent obviously my entire life in a CMO business. So I worked for smaller CMO companies and for the global number ones in this world. And now I'm with IDT. Thank you, Lucas, for your word, in the sexiest area, because IDT is a leading company in vaccines, prophylactic and therapeutic vaccines, as well as gene therapy and fill and finish of biologics. And indeed, supply chain and logistics of this kind of products is crucial for the success of the product. And the question we are facing from time to time is to bring in mind of our customers that a minus 80 degrees Celsius is completely different stuff as shipping of tablets and capsules. And this costs, and this is a different story. So I think we will have a nice discussion about how we can deal with all these things together with our clients.
I think that would be very interesting. So you clearly, there's a lot of investment still going into the manufacturing side of this business, both from the companies and also from investors. There's a lot of development of the outsourcing. This is something that didn't happen when I first joined this industry 40 years ago. Why should actually the companies, the classic drug manufacturers, continue to make themselves? Why wouldn't the outsourcing industry just take over and make it completely virtual?
Okay. I think it's a fair question, and I guess you would now be hugged by everybody of my marketing colleagues because they believe that products can be made elsewhere. So we try currently to convince them that it is of value on one hand to keep a certain footprint from a manufacturing perspective or capabilities within the site, within the company. But of course we cannot ignore the trend. We're not in certain technologies being anymore as competitive as certain CMOs. So what we try to do is open ourselves up and include into that concept of own manufacturing capabilities the piece of CMOs. And what we have done along with the network strategy development is we are now talking about always both sides. So where do we want to be visible with own assets, with own capabilities, or where we want to contract those? But to steer it, that's the plan right now, it should be entirely. And for us, that was a harsh change in mindset because we were always been used to drive our network internally. We were always been used to invest. And we see that from a value discussion, it's not paying off anymore in that case. So the current process and the investments we're doing internally, that goes along with where are those technologies where we want to keep because they are very specific and we don't find those technologies maybe in the market. We're being very still keen with the launch capabilities, so own investments where we want to have launches, where we want to be quick or where special technologies come along. And there are certain technologies where we might not have experiences or where we see that this is broadly available in the market, and there we go for it and combine then the CMOs to our network. And to do this process, because you can imagine over the last 40 years we have been grown organically, different kind of cycles of strategy, and right now it is that strategy looking at the entire network and try to build that footprint which brings that into the future and make still small molecules competitive. And CMOs are definitely a part of it. So
from the CMO side, are you having those conversations early enough? Do you have the capacity to provide?
I think, from a CMO side, first of all, we leave it up to any customer what they want to do in-house and what they want to do outsource. When I look at the capabilities and when I look back 20 years, I think at the moment we have players in the market that can really deliver the whole supply chain from early phase intermediates to APIs to drug products as well. Reliable. I think we have now CMOs with a size that really bringing you the trust level that we really have the quality at the right standard. When I look at my network, we have an average 1 FDA inspection per week at one of the sites. So I think here, we get regularly tested and, from that point of view, absolutely trustworthy. When we look at the capital intensity of the whole CDMO world, I think it's important that we have flexible manufacturing in-house. We have scalable, that we can invest fast to deliver flexible solutions for upsides, but also deal with the downsides. And the only thing that is constant in our business is that the forecasts are wrong. Whatever we do, whatever our customers do, and I think that's just part of the business. And from that point of view, I think there's now solutions out there that we really can deliver a lower capital intensive solution to the market, which at the end really has to benefit the final patient, the customer.
Mm-hmm. Just to jump in there, Howard, I think you coined it at the start when you mentioned about product out the door is our way of earning money. And that's our only way of getting revenue in. So then it gets down to security of supply and then risk associated with that security of supply. I'm agnostic about what is the right solution. I think it depends on the product and it depends on the people and the companies. But ultimately, where you can find the best solution for that product, so if it's a real niche, novel technology, I think most companies would seek the people that are most capable in those sort of novel and niche technologies. When it comes to a certain size, certainly from a big pharma perspective, I think we want to get control to help secure supply and lessen risk. And then, finding dual streams or working with suppliers and or in the life cycle as it gets further on, then we feel it's more established and the technology's out there. But ultimately, looking at it from a point of security of supply, risk, and finding the right partners, and then I think there's a mixed model generally to be had.
And maybe I can speak just to the novel technology because I'm coming from this area, and what we are facing indeed is a kind of, as you are mentioning completely correctly, that big pharma is relying on specialists. Let's assume a big pharma would invest in novel technology and would have 1 or 2 products in their own portfolio in the development. They cannot utilize the facility at all, and on the other hand, they do not have the experience, while a CDMO having 10, 20, 30 different products in the same area has, on one hand, much better utilization of the facility, on the other hand, is much more experienced in developing of those products, which is a big advantage because you are just a faster market as a big pharma would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting. You just touched on the novel technologies. So you're clearly supplying, you're investing in. Are the people who are contracting you prepared to make the investment that's required in your business, or are they expecting you to put all the capital up front?
Yeah,
Products
we might be a little bit specific company, so we do not ask our clients to invest in assets within IDT. We are rather interested in commitments from the clients and building around that a business model and investing on our own. This gives us the flexibility to use the equipment for other clients too, which is substantial for us because as sterile facilities, especially BSL-2 virus stuff, is quite expensive to run. So we need to be as flexible as possible. But yes, since we have these requirements from the market, we are investing a lot of money on our own and getting for that long-term commitments from our clients.
Excellent. I wonder if I could just change gear a little bit. And there's many more products coming through the pipeline now. It's changed. We can all see that, and we're very grateful for that. Is there sufficient capacity, both within the companies and the CMO industry, to satisfy that? Or is there going to be pressure, competitive pressure on actual supply of drug molecules, on manufacturing coming through?
I would say it might be related indeed to specific technologies. So what we are facing in all those novel things like ADCs, like virus, like, I don't know, gene therapies, there is just a absolutely global limit in capacities. So the people just do not have the choice to go to one, to the other, or to somewhere else. They have just very few players which are able to deliver the products. If you are talking about commodities, of course the price pressure is much higher because you have big choice of many companies which are able to deliver the same services.
I think, only support this. I think when you look at different technologies, sterile, mammalian definitely at the moment is at a very tight capacity, and I think everyone working in this field is investing, and I think the growth there is substantial over the next years to come. When we look at some of the commodities areas, it's actually interesting as well that some of the players, even in small molecules, are completely full. And here I think we saw a massive move the last couple of years, where in the past a lot of that was outsourced to Asia, and now especially the smaller and mid-sized pharma companies bring a lot of work back to Europe and the US. So I think there we have at the moment really tight capacity management, and for those who are in API since years and years, it's actually interesting to see this. When we look at expansions, we follow different models. I think commodities, every CMO has to invest himself in, because that's their bread and butter business. In some specialty technologies, I think we now getting requests, and we offer different models how we can actually deal with investments. We have condo models where we actually offer customers in our network a building that we run for them. We actually do the capex, they have to bring the money, and we operate. If you really have niche technologies, it's a really nice way to operate. We also have flexible models where we try to bring 2 or 3 customers together, build dedicated units, and then give them flexibility on capacity. And this discussion, if you would have had the discussion 20 years ago, everyone would say this will never work. Now this is really operationally available. Pharma companies, mid-sized, small, large pharma companies are now getting interest. I think that's a model that really will drive the future as well, that we share expensive capacity in a flexible way.
Just from my perspective, where we are being currently focusing on, and I think that is built nicely to what I've said already, is investment in the biotechnology arena, because there we were lacking. For those what we're foreseeing in the future, really capacity, and there we're also keen to have it by ourselves. On the small molecules or the commodities, it is that we're being still in a phase where we need to adapt our own capacity. What I would like to add here is the question, do we have that capacity always in the right place where we want to have it? And the way of how we have been grown in the past and what we are facing right now is that it is for those developments we are foreseeing, it sometimes the capacity sits in the wrong spot. And that is driving certain transformations here, transfer processes, and that is also currently for us a headache, because you might be quick in that technology transfer, but you also see in the markets that getting new approvals, driving those transfer and changes through gives us a lot of regulatory hurdles. This is going on the timeline. So that's why we try now to envision future and start this process right now, to be sure then that in 5 up to 6 years we are in those spots with the capacity we need. But overall, still with a small molecule, it is a process of adjustment, because as I said, this is technology you buy in, and then when we can avoid investment here, of course we pull the partner.
So I'd like to pick up one other question about the novel technologies and the investment. I mean, there's an absolute wall of money has hit the immuno-oncology area. I mean, even in the CRIC, we started 2 companies that are involved in the cellular side of that. Do you think investors and small company entrepreneurs understand the supply issues that are around that, the manufacturing costs and difficulties that are going to be there, the potential barriers that this would put in place of a pharma company taking them over? And what level of kind of education and hand-holding can you afford to do from the supply side to those companies?
So maybe I can try to give an answer to that. What we are facing, especially in these very high sophisticated technologies, for now, my impression is that nobody knows how to make the pricing for. if you have a gene therapy product where you have a batch size of 100 vials, and you have, yes, 100 vials per batch, because the population, these rare diseases are just a few patients, how you want to price this stuff. You have your facility in-house, you have a certain amount of people which are working on that, and what is the price for? Is it 2 euros? Is it 100 euros? Is it 1,000 euros? And we have discussions with our clients around that, and it is at the moment still a topic for a common understanding how you can run those very specific things, and what is the price for. And I think this will still continue in the next couple of years till all those new things are more common to everyone, and everybody knows what they can ask on the market for those products, and then can pay a portion to the CMOs for. So this is an interesting thing. But if I may ask my colleagues, especially from big pharma, how I take the chance and ask a provocative question. How you guys are dealing actually with commodities if you have big selection of suppliers, where is a big price pressure on those products? What are the key drivers for making decision for partners? Is it always the price? Are these other things you are selecting?
Not my area, but I have been involved in the past, and it's really those two things: security of supply and cost. So it'd be a balance between the two.
I think we started yesterday that discussion, and this morning I think companies which have went through interruption of supply knows how big the pressure is and how long this burden, once you went through that valley, is, so it lasts forever. And when we're looking back in our history, and that was also recent issues, if you're being coming out, we came out of a phase of consolidation. We were so proud of one of our certain key sites. We did supply there, we did launches there, and once this site got hit, you're being really in trouble. And this is, I would say, coding you for future topics. So, of course, at the end and in certain parts of the company, it's always the price, because at least even in that area we're in, we need to serve the profitability piece. But on the other hand, of course, we see what is going along on a company image, on supply risk, when we're really not being able to find the right partner, delivering us that service over time. And that service I would put into the front. And this service is not only price, it goes along with supply reliability, and it also goes along with a high standard of quality and compliance. And you already said that is a natural topic. What I like, at least with the interaction also with those new startup company, they seem, at least at that point in time, not so much impacted by this past like we are, because we know all the issues which can happen. So it is, in the interaction, something which should help us to redefine our supply chains, our way of manufacturing. But I would definitely, in that relation, put the service up front. So when we've been selecting, we've been relatively wait long until we ask the question of price. It should fit into the strategy, it should fit in our portfolio, and what we try to do is looking for that collaboration, and we don't want to have quick changes at the CMO levels. And of course, yes, we're been running always a selection process, but this is always going also along with the fact that those CMOs we've been holding, they should stay for a while. Because we see, it's also a topic of how we are approaching compliance and quality that has to be shared, that has to be developed at the CMO side, and this takes cost. So I would definitely put the service at the top. And in those cases where we have also, as a company in certain places, offered manufacturing capabilities as part of the service with other companies, at least in my discussions, the main question was always, do we share certain values, do we share certain aspects, and at the end you're stepping in. And if the service discussion can then be combined with a good price, that's perfect. And of course I believe in certain commodities the price you're offering will be always better than what we can do internally because of the way of how we're also allocating cost. But it's not only the price discussion.
So
Maybe-
I'd like to pick that up, and we can bear in mind that we've now been challenged by the audience to give some real-life examples of collaboration. Do they really happen, or are we just inventing them from the panel? And you might wish to pick up the aspect of risk sharing and whether this has actually worked. And
Yeah. Maybe I can give you some examples, some real time, without mentioning names. At the moment in my company, we run 26 what we call legacy integrated supply chain products, just due to the mergers that we did. So we produce API, and we also produce the file drop product. And we had initially interesting customer reactions. One customer after the DSM Patheon merger called me up, and he was really worried because he has chosen DSM and Patheon as the key suppliers for two of his most important products. And suddenly it was in one hand. So from a risk management perspective, his risk team had an issue. And we discussed this, and I think it's interesting, after about half a year, all these discussions went away. I think they all realized as long as he has two sides with a solid supply chain, the risk is dealt with as well. There's always a question on the price, but that's a different discussion that you have every 3-4 years anyway. So that's one area I think where people really now learn that you do not need 3-4 different supply chains, different suppliers. I think if you deal with one network, that this really works. On some other interesting examples are on the development side. We launched about 2 years ago what we call one-sourced integrated offering from API, drug substance to drug product development, while saving a lot of time working in parallel. It gives us also a lot of flexibility to be resilient if something happens. And I think that if you have everything well coordinated, you really can cut time out when you have an issue. Recently in summer, I had one biologics mammalian production in the Netherlands, the sterile filling in the US, and we already had during the production of the mammalian filtration issues, and then while we filled the vials, 2 weeks later the vials got cloudy, so protein folding. If this would have happened out of two hands, me as a drug product specialist, I would say I followed your recipe, it's not my issue, it's an API issue. And the API supplier would have done exactly the same, said I finished, everything was fine, it's not my issue. And you as a customer, you sit there and you have to try to play around with both partners. While this is in one hand, it's clear where the issue lies. I don't get any value playing both sides out, so we had, within 2 weeks, we analyzed everything, we proved everything, we released it, and I think this is the value where we really can make supply chains much more robust in the future if you really bundle it properly and work across the interfaces much closer. Same if you add additional services. We're now getting more and more asked to add 3PL support for a customer, even to patient centers. I think that's an area where we can also integrate for the next step, so that we really move closer to the CRO work, what they do, and then really deliver the services at the interface and to the patients.
I can sort of back that up with an example from the clinical supply chain. So from the big pharma perspective, so we've recently, for facility strategic drivers, rationalized our network in clinical suppliers. We generally conduct the majority of it internally, but we've partnered, and I think it's the strategic partnership that you need with a vendor in order to make it work. So all of our oral products funnel through a service partner. So one service partner who we use, so that's all of our oral portfolio in clinical for one element, so one stage of that packaging process will funnel through one vendor and then come back into us to then finish the process and distribute out to all of our clinical trials. So we have a strategic relationship with a vendor, and looking at their multi-site strategy, this, that and the other, and the relationship that we have, that we can then work collectively with them to ensure they've got the right strategies to avoid any mishaps and stockouts when it comes to our clinical trials.
And what you say, I think this is indeed a kind of right way to operate, because the life we are in is still very challenging. What you said, Lucas, is exactly the case which might happen in operations, that sometimes not everything is going well. And just if you have a good partnership with your clients and with the CMO, you can find the right solution. If you have just transactional collaboration based on price or based on things which obviously might be interesting but are not sustainable, long-term related, earlier or later you will be in trouble because there is no trust, there is no deep partnership collaboration, which is the only tool which might overjump problems. Mm-hmm. So I think this is key for future to have rather sustainable long-term partnerships with CMOs and with clients instead of jumping and looking for cheap prices at the end of the day.
And I think it's a must now, as we're being committed and have to deliver full transparency about our supply chains of all our products. In that moment, when the product is being in the hand of our partners, there has to be that kind of interaction. Otherwise, I think we cannot commit on that transparency. Yeah. And this can only work when those are being connected and really not ending up, if there are troubles, in a side-by-side discussion.
So can I ask the person that put the blog up whether they've answered the question? Well, come on. Let's press the point.
I probably didn't maybe ask the question or articulate as well as I maybe should. I suppose in the last few years when I've been here, there's been a lot of talk about collaboration within the supply chain between kind of CDMO partners. So not necessarily, say, Patheon or a Catalan who do everything, but also smaller and kind of more specialist CDMO partners that, I say, working with the GSK or a big sponsor that are working together. And there's been quite a lot of talk in the last few years about the collaboration and trust and transparency between multiple partners involved. And that's the bit where it keeps on coming up, but no one seems to be able to give genuine examples of this working. So it might not be the right panel maybe for that question, but...
Maybe I can fill you in with some more details. You know, on the API side, you know, for me, the concept just investing in more assets is wrong, and I think here I would like really to create the idea to have a supplier network that works across different technologies and really has the same quality standard, the same project management and the same supply chain core backbone, so that we really can link it together. Here, you know, when I talk to some of my pharma customers, they're really worried about this. Luckily, I have in my own portfolio a large amount of generics that we sell to several customers, and in those areas I can trial this out, and I have at the moment 4 products that actually I produce outside of my network. I release it in-house, and I really guarantee the security of supply, the quality, and the GMP regulatory side as well. So it works. I think it will take a while till the larger pharma world actually accepts that we can actually have someone managing a supply chain. Not everything is done under the same roof, but that, you know, we have strong enough partners to ensure quality, regulatory aspects, and the security of supply. So I think it's emerging, but it will take a while to be mainstream.
I understand your comment, because in some of those discussions, and maybe also in our actions, we're sometimes being perceived as really, really slow. So not being agile enough to add this as a partnering concept into our strategy. I think that has changed and is going to progress. We have been, at least from our perspective, very successful in that topic of partnering and CMO concept on an OTC part, where this was natural for us also to do this way. Now we're pulling it into the PM arena. And what we're also right now doing, and that was new for our company, is with certain products where we see that we will never be capable to produce them internally, we are now going directly from development into the CMO direction. So we're getting more and more aggressive now, but please apologize sometimes. It's hard to get rid of your past, and it has to go with reshaping your own network. And when your self-understanding was always that it has to be owned and it has IP criticality, whatever, then it's difficult to incorporate this easily. But I think there is no way around that. And my message would be here, but take this as a very personal one, I think it has to be balanced. What I would be utmost afraid is that we've been getting rid of all the internal know-how, so I would like to see this in a good combination. And look, there are advantages we will never conquer. And there are markets where we don't have a footprint. So we're being more than happy if there is a partner in place who can help that, because country boundaries are getting more and more difficult. Market prices is a huge impact. So we will not be able to deliver what the commercial side needs without those ones. And that's why we're turning this strongly over. In the past, we never would have launched a product without own capacities. Now, we're being forcing them to say, no, go to a CMO, we help you in acquiring him, we help you in all the setup of contracts, etc. We steer this for you, but we will not invest anymore in our own capacity. And that was a new step in development, but it is needed.
To maybe add a different example, but a lens of collaboration, we're currently exploring, we haven't done it yet, but working with an engineering equipment integrator to essentially build a novel capability, to innovate the way that we produce patient kits for clinical suppliers. And we're exploring with them a deal that would see them work with us to design, build, and deploy the equipment, but they fund it and then lease it back to us over a number of years and generate a partnership. And they could then use that relationship to then offer that service to other customers and things like that, or grow the business in other ways. So a different example, but quite flexible.
And I can just fully agree what you guys are saying. There are some rationale behind why partnering is so important, and those are two. First of all, in all companies, everybody's pretty busy, so you do not have so many people could concentrate on all things which need to be done. On the other hand, not you, but generally not everybody has capabilities. And third, if you want to have speed to market, you need to use partnering. And speed to market is also a key, because the return on investment, and we are talking about millions and millions in the development area, so you need earlier or later to get your money back. And you can get them if you are using partners to get them reimbursed even earlier.
And collaborating to get the pool, I think, is really important as well. When there is that innovative element and there's a risk involved. So on the project that I was just mentioning, AstraZeneca involved in a remedies project, the one I mentioned earlier. It generates a common purpose, but helps de-risk some of these more innovative moves.
Right.
So the pharma industry has common purpose amongst itself. I'm really interested to hear that. I'm going to pick up after the question at the back on the agility and the clinical supply question, because I thought that was a discussion that we started last night about how to speed up actually the clinical process and how a part of a company can deliver that. Can I have your question, please?
One of our customers has over 100 CMOs that they work with. Now, I'm all for dual sourcing, but that's creating a complexity of its own, of course. And my question is really around that ability to switch between CMOs, like you would, a bank account, for example. People don't tend to, but they could if they wanted to. Do we need to get better at technology transfer to be able to take a product from one CMO to another CMO as a pharma side? And I guess more provocatively, are there too many small CMOs in the world?
I think I can take this initially. I think you're absolutely right. There are far too many CMOs, and I think that the market is far too fragmented. And I think what a challenge is, especially in the development area, and if you transfer, you never know under what basis and how sturdy the process was developed. I had 2 years ago, we transferred a phase 3 in an API out of a Chinese CMO, and we had to revalidate everything, and it was a nightmare. And I think here, the larger CMOs, they do, and I think Gregor already said this, a lot of tech transfers. We do on the drug product side at least above 100 tech transfers a year. On the API side, bio side, at least 20 to 30 transfers a year. So we are specialized, so we know what we do. But a lot of smaller teams out there, they really try to do the best, but they just lack the experience. And I think here in the future, it's really needed that we have further consolidation. That's one point. Second point, I think the key CMOs, they have to drive a standard, how we actually develop a quality standard as well, so that at least we get slightly harmonized in the whole field.
Yeah, I would say it is even much, much more as that. And 100 CMO is still nothing. We have clients which have 300 CMOs in our portfolio. We are in a highly regulated area, which means we just cannot switch like candies today in this garage and tomorrow somewhere else. We need to follow very expensive and with many efforts behind if we want to transfer things from one to the other. And this is not just the quality which you are transferring, you have an army of people and thousands of documents and authorities you need to consider to make this transfer. So this makes things very expensive. And yes, we need to learn much better to make products transferable, but we are dependent, highly dependent on authorities and rules we have to follow, and this is actually, I would say, maybe even the key why these things are not easy to do. And then you have another aspect. If you are in small molecules, the products are easier to validate, while in large molecules, those products are so unique, so you can try your best, and the probability you will get exact the same products transferred to another facility is difficult to achieve.
At least from my perspective, you're obviously touching a very, very harsh pain point in the sense of that we're being so used now to work with this buzzword agility, and when we're talking agility, the partnering is part of it, and we try to allocate and bound those companies. But exactly as you have heard, we have been having problems internally to go along with that agility, because on the one hand, yes, we want to be agile, but we want to keep 100% control. Contracting a CMO that drives more or less 300 departments internally nuts, because you have to have EHS, you have to have the quality, then controlling wants also to log, then purchasing wants to have a log, then the 3PM control group wants to log. So there we really have to still learn and rather develop ourselves in the sense of that also our own organization needs to adapt here. But I think the main issue is also the flexibility you see then finally with the regulators. We've been yet talking in early life cycle modules, we've been talking to just not launching the product with one side, we're talking about launching the products with the CMOs, but still with the flexibility then with these CMOs or pushing the product from one to the other CMO is low. And in special countries, you have been then 6 years along the road until you have recognized the new CMO, and this is then still for us a huge impact. So this is where we still have to work with, because it's easier from a technical perspective to transfer, but to finally get this then registered is a huge topic. And there's another element I would like to mention is this topic of agility, flexibility with different CMOs. You have to have this from the beginning of your product development in mind. In the past, we were very used to work also with product, make them very specific, and at the end, we weren't capable to bring this to a CMO, because it was so designed and developed of being key as part of also our intellectual property. So if you want to have a small molecule long-term also be able to transfer, you should design it better the way that it is easy. And that starts with the formulation itself, the equipment you're going to use for that, as well as packaging materials you're choosing. Because then speed goes along with less effort on showing that the CMO is comparable, and less studies, less documents to be provided, and the better chance you have when the product is designed in standard. So in our strategy discussion currently, R&D is involved, and we try to define with them certain, along with certain categories, also certain standards to enable us then long-term to be flexible with the CMO part. And it's one final comment. It's an interesting discussion. If you have a lot of CMOs, you're discussing complexity. If you've been reducing it to certain single sources, then you have again the discussion of flexibility. I think it's again here a certain balance you need to find, and I think complexity in the future will not go away. So if you have 100, it's maybe not an appropriate initiative to drill this down to 50. Maybe you're more investing in try to manage them the best you can. Because reshaping them, it takes you years, decades.
Do you feel that's addressed your question?
Yeah, I think it has. I think we sometimes get too trapped in the pharma special case fallacy, and we should look at other industries at how they can streamline supply chains, because they wouldn't do it how we do it.
Yes.
And this is a valid point, how you get rid of that special pharma piece, which is on one hand has us make us proud over decades, and now we try to reinvent ourselves there, but how? And as you have heard it, it's not on our own. It is a social, it's a regulated discussion as well, because that kind of flexibility we might need gets along with a big fear that we are failing because losing control about our supply chain. And then when you're once in that quality compliance trap, you might impact your entire company. Because that's what I have learned along with supply chain. That is a major issue if you're not having always that under control.
Of course, I recognize that Lucas would like to remove all the new entrants and control the CMO manufacturing as acquisition, but if you didn't bring in new entrants, you wouldn't get the competitive pressures in there and you wouldn't be driving the innovation. You'd expect me to say that as I was involved in the startup of one. Could I move back to the agility question? I'd like you to pick up on the, Andy, on the clinical supply side question.
Sure. So I think quite frankly, if we look at the supply chain, from the clinical supplier's perspective, we're too slow. I think even if you look at classical phasing of clinical studies, i.e. going through separate phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, etc. studies, the CMC organizations are too slow, and the days of pre-investing upfront to develop, manufacture, and get all of that stuff on the shelf to allow the clinic to progress at the pace they want to and not put CMC on the critical path are over, certainly from my experience. We deliberately put CMC on the critical path in medicines development to enable to save money. And once we've got more evidence that we're going to move a product forward, we then decide to invest in the development, manufacturing and supply. So what we're trying to do is instead of the classical model where we sort of push product to finished goods and then we make few products at any point in time with long lead times, what we're trying to do is flip that on its head, where we can make all products in clinical trial at any point in time and trickle them through. So wherever you choose to break the supply chain. So currently we're looking to go one step back and rather hold inventory as finished goods and distribute them on demand for our clinical studies. We're looking to move that breaking point one step back in the supply chain and start to look at, can we hold bulk drug product? And then innovate with technology to enable to then flow the product out and assemble it on demand to the clinical requirement as and when needed. So then you've got, instead of a 4-month lead time or whatever from converting bulk drug into patient kits, we can offer all of our customers, all of the project teams in R&D, a 1-day or a 1-week lead time. So they currently can take that time back and give it back to the clinical program or give it back to the product development program. So that's time that can be used quite valuably so. Equally, we're looking at then thinking about taking that breaking point to one step even further back in the supply chain when you think about holding an inventory of API and then finding a platform that you can then dose, pack, label, ship on demand to the requirement of what the center, what the clinics want to do. And we're exploring this at the moment with our clinical partners, and what that capability offers them is a very different way to be able to write protocols and be able to adapt through based on what they find in the studies. And I'm really looking at early phase studies here, so from start of phase 1 to proof of concept. They can then leave it open and then we can just keep the material flowing at the right doses to what they want to explore and then take through to confirmatory study. That needs to be combined with probably a different trajectory on the product development program to then be able to cut over at some point to whatever you want to launch with. And depending on the risk class of whatever molecule you're dealing with, certainly our portfolio at the moment, a good number could operate in this way that should give a lot of flexibility. One, to get better endpoints in the clinic, so hopefully get a better dose when we're looking at dose finding studies, but also moving through a lot quicker and with less patients.
So I think actually that would be really important in driving recruitment, and it's a really be useful facet for the small companies who are squabbling to get the patients in through the door, and particularly in some of these complex disease situations. And when Andy described this to me, all I could think of is he gets a couple of proof cases it's worth investing in and persuade him to leave GSK. I have a question down here, and then I'd like to address the one on the board.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Christopher from Böhring as well. My question goes in a different direction a bit. As we talk about the future supply chain, it's always with the next generation. How do you tackle the talent management within your organizations to make this interesting for the next generation?
Okay.
May I maybe try to answer this one? So from my perspective, there are different models how supply chain might be done by companies. So one is M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Another one is just looking for alliances and partnerships even between different CMOs, because we are going in a world which is more and more specialized in different areas. So the groups of patients are smaller and smaller because the product we are manufacturing are very specific to different patients, and the technologies, especially the novel ones, are so expensive that you need to build alliances where different pieces might be done by companies which have expertise in these different steps of supply chain, to make sure that at the end the product you are delivering to the client is the right one. So I think up to now it is still not that much on the market that we see real alliances, but I think in few years from now we will see this kind of model more and more.
Maybe I can give you a slightly different answer. You know, when you look at pharma companies, normally have 3, 4, 5 main drug products on the market. So people working supply chain have a limited focus on actual products. What we see is now running several hundreds of products that, you know, you get much more diversity in the work. You can actually move different supply chains, you can move from different fields. We also see now, especially after the DSM integration in Patheon, that people love to work in drug substance and then move into drug product, or the other way around. So that's an enrichment of your experience. You actually understand the whole space much better. That's one point. The other point is with all these tech transfers, experience grows, agility grows, and I think it's more interesting. I recruited recently several key talents out of big pharma because it was just for them, it's getting too boring. The programs are running, they're running slow, as we know in pharma development, and if they can work in parallel in different programs, it's just enrichment for their own experience.
I think it's, of course, a question going of how we will change the future, and I think people and attracting and bringing those people into it will be a game changer. Are we good at that? Just another personal comment. I sometimes don't think so. I believe long term, especially in the supply chain arena, those people working there are privileged, because when I see what's currently going along with standardization of manufacturing, those people in supply chain who are being able to design networks, design warehouse and distribution concepts globally and help to drive the company value, I think they will be key. That classical, I'm in the head of manufacturing and I'm sitting in a country and I'm at track volumes and I do the best I can to reduce cost and drive efficiency, they might be outdated. Having said so, it's not so easy to keep those people motivated then in the supply chain arena, because we're been confronting them again with a very yet less agile environment, and we've been threatening them with a lot of regulatory burden. So I think here we need to find a way out and keep these positions attractive, because we need those people. Because there is a time when I will be totally outdated and cannot give the right answers on how a company should deal with supply chain and manufacturing, and we need those people who are then being engaged. And I guess it's not, at least in my experiences, it's not the money topic. It's the possibility to develop them and being attractive. And here we not have yet all answers, but I think supply chain, just from an operational discipline, except quality, will be a key function for the future. So I hope that we can keep those people then active, and I hope that with also those strategic ideas we have developed and where we have involved those people, we can show that there is an opportunity of shaping the future. And definitely supply chain is one of those. Where we have to be better, and that is maybe, I don't know how it is with your companies, it is that we are being sometimes also very good at plans, but less good at implementation. So also those people need then to see that their impact or their input has consequences. And there we need to make sure that we make that happen.
Thank you. We have one question that's come up, which is really, I think, to do with the limited supply from the CMO sector, pharma needing to gain that supply, and would they actually go for value-based pricing rather than cost plus pricing, I bring them really in collaboration, share the margin. And then can I ask you just to think, if you're prepared to answer that question, and then just to give a 10 seconds, 20 seconds of what you see the future over the next 10 years. I know, Dawson, you've already said that, so I will come to you last on the would you share question. Okay.
So first, to the value-based pricing, in my view, there's a concept that is working. I had, at least in my past, some partial examples. At the end, it's the trust and the openness from both partners, and really to bring out the maximum of the supply chain of the product. I think that is possible. In the view of time, maybe the future of our industry, when I look 10 years ahead, for me, the farm supply chain should be a mixture between Amazon, McDonald's, and maybe Boeing. So you get a very simple transactional platform like Amazon has it, a very regulated quality model that you can actually move around CDMOs or your own assets, so that you have, like McDonald's has a very stringent franchise that is delivering wherever you go the same French fries and the same hamburgers, so that we really have a concept on quality, the way how we run productions, and the reliability of an airplane. So I think that is the vision to move forward. I think we need fundamental changes. I think some companies in the industry now really push them, and I'm proud to be working for one of them.
Okay, so certainly on the value pricing and share, I can see it working. I don't have any personal experience or examples of where I've discussed that with a vendor, but I think having a common goal and a suitable contract that incentivizes people to work collectively in the right direction, it's completely viable. Regarding the next 10 years, I think it was mentioned yesterday in the opening interview about stratification and personalized medicine. And I think the industry will, it is gradually moving in that direction, all the way from, smaller populations for the medicines, and then you can start thinking about, a selection of doses that are most suitable to different subpopulations, and then going all the way to some of the research and products we're seeing in cell and gene therapy, where, part of the individual becomes a raw ingredient to the product that then gets remanufactured and sent back to them as a licensed medicine. So that's down to the extreme level of the patient supplying one of the raw materials to go back to them to be their product. And then that's sort of really hitting on the service industry, where the research manufacturer, the supply chain are directly engaging with the patient. And I think that there's a whole spectrum of possibility or what that may look like for different therapy areas and different products. But what we're going to see is us having to move in that direction, where we can carve out more precise and unique services for all of the different fragments that we're going to have to serve. And that will mean dealing with larger number of units going through our facilities and being able to move them through quicker. So having far more platform-based, agile operations that can then offer that flexibility to whomever needs it.
Yeah, so from my point of view, this question is quite complex, and there is no simple answer for. On one hand, we have still the commodities, where it is, since decades, a pretty common process to have fee for service, and I don't think it will change in future, because just the price erosion is there. It is a competitive market. On the other hand, you have these specialties and the novel technologies, where you have the chance to make a value proposition, where you have the chance to work on a partnership basis, which allows you to share risk and to share profits. And I shown you this example with this gene therapy, where we have these discussions these days, how to price stuff which is so complex. And I think we are not at the end of these discussions. It will continue for a certain period of time, but in a few years from now, I think it will become easier to find answers for. But for now, as mentioned, there is no simple answer. There are too many products on the market with different approaches.
There's definitely not a one-size-fits-all answer to this, I'm sure. Dawson, do you have any final word?
I would really encourage you to look forward and find your very own answer in the business you are in, for how you would like to drive the next 10 years futures. Because also We have tried to do that, and the way, what we have come up with long term is, yes, there's a currently strong focus on the bio part. Yes, on the other side, we need to make and keep the small molecules very, very attractive. So what we are now introducing is that global view at that network. That doesn't mean global oversteering also the local or regional organizations. No, it is just connecting all the capabilities in that manufacturing network together and define it and use it for the best purpose. And to give you an idea how we would have done is, just one final comment, is that where I believe the future goes is the integrational piece within your own companies. Pressure is rising from the market and from the customers tremendously. The best answer on agility, being with guys of high quality, is that those disciplines in the companies are being integrated. So it's not a question of divisional size and influence on the company. It's just bringing those forces together. It sounds silly, but it is the answer we also try now to find by saying a business unit driving a certain portfolio depends on an end-to-end value chain, and everybody in that chain has a piece of say. So operations integrate themselves. And we renamed operations now into supply. I know some of the companies already have done that. By naming it supply, we honored the fact that it is not any more value, that it is